Welcome to River People, a podcast about interesting people in Southern Oregon. This is our inaugural interview, so I'd like to give a special thanks to our guest for being in the spotlight for our first episode. Spencer Reynolds, a fine artist of oil painting and ink line drawings living in the coastal town of Brookings, Oregon. Spencer is best known for his captivating landscapes, which he interprets with a surreal and impressionist technique, combining vivid colors and a surf aesthetic to capture the water and landscape of his environment. Artandsurf.com is his website and online store. He also owns his own gallery, the Semi-Aquatic Gallery, located at 654 Chetco Avenue, Highway 101 northbound in Brookings. He's open Monday and Tuesday from 11 to 5:30 and Thursday through Saturday from 11 to 5:30. Also, he has expanded hours in the summer to include 7 days a week. You can follow him at his Facebook handle, Semi-Aquatic Gallery, or on Instagram at semi_aquatic. Our conversation began with Spencer discussing his relationship with Southern Oregon and meandered around many topics. If a person or product mentioned sparked your interest, look in the description for a link. I found our time together extremely interesting as we delved into the artist's life, art, hobbies, and philosophies. I hope you enjoy.
My family moved here in like 74. So I did all my schooling here, and then I left after high school and was gone for like 17 years and then been back like 15 or 16.
What brought you back?
Love the place. It's just before this I was in Portland and I wanted to be back on the coast. I was married at the time and we were looking at Lincoln City, but my mom lives here and she found a place that she thought we could afford. And I think it was like 2009. So it's just 2008 or 2009. It was just when everything was like crashing and Portland's housing market was still strong. So I sold my house up there. We bought a fixer-upper down here it was a pretty cool house.
That's great. I mean, like looking around, like your shop, I can't imagine you not living near the ocean. Was that part of it?
Yeah. I miss the ocean a lot. I grew up surfing. So yeah, I'd spent so much of my time in the water growing up. And so, yeah, I was definitely a fish out of water in Portland. It wasn't really like a city that I had a good time there, but it wasn't really, I didn't see it as a place I was going to stay long term.
Was it very different from Southern Oregon to be kind of in that Metro Oregon area?
Yeah, definitely. It's a different world up there than it is here. There's things I like about here. There's things I like about there. I don't like everything here. I don't like everything there.
Understood. When did you start doing art professionally? Was it in Portland?
No, I lived after high school. I did community college in Eugene. Then I went to Seattle and I went to the Art Institute and went there for a couple of years. Got an associate's degree and I started working for video game companies, just like children's educational video games. Everything was pretty, the technology wasn't amazing at the time. So I just kind of like push pixels to form characters and things like that. It's way better now than it was then.
How did you go from doing that to, how would you describe your art?
I don't know. I've had different descriptions for it over the years. At one point I called it pinstripe impressionism. I don't know that quite fits it anymore. I'd say it's surrealist. It feels like maybe like some sort of impressionistic surrealist style now with maybe a little mysticism in there or something like that too.
I think obviously it's your art, so your description of it is going to be canon. But how did you go from video game to that? What was that journey like?
My dad was a painter, and I I started painting when I was 19, and I never really stopped. I was always interested in being a better painter. And in art school, there was a teacher named Henry Stenson, and he was like the figure drawing teacher. I don't remember if I had one of his classes. I think I may have. I don't know if I had one of his classes in school, but when I graduated, I expressed an interest in wanting to be a better painter and better at figure drawing, and a friend of mine had modeled for him, and so I started going to his figure drawing classes and painting classes, and he specifically taught Russian impressionism. So I think I just really fell in love with painting at that, like deeply fell in love with it. And it's just been a passion ever since.
You paint in oils, correct?
Yeah.
Do you have a specific kind of oil that you like to use or brand, or where do you find your palette?
I mean, if I can, I mostly get Gamblin. They're a Portland oil paint company, and I like that they're an Oregon-based company. And when I was in Portland, I worked at an art store, and I forget his first name, but the guy that formed the company, he would come by and do demos for us, just for us, like it just seemed like a really grassroots company, and they make really quality product. I'm not super picky though. I'll take Gamblin or Winsor and Newton, or, I mean, sometimes I find paints at yard sales and things. I'll take those too. I'll just take whatever I can get as far as the oil paints go. Cause, sometimes you find a really, tube of old paint from a yard sale or something, and it's great. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
I know you have line drawings as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do your paintings usually start as line drawings, or is there a correlation between the two, or is it just two different mediums?
Two different mediums. My paintings start with just rough shapes, and I start with the big basics, trying to get, it's almost like you're walking through the fog. As you're walking, you see shapes. And so that's like to me, that's what I initially try to create, is like the big broad shapes. As you get closer, you see more color and detail, and then when you get right up on it, you know exactly what it is. So that's kind of what I do with the painting. The pen and ink is a different process. Painting, you can totally, if you screw something up, you can totally just paint over it and figure it out. So there's a lot more room for error. Mm-hmm. Pen and ink is hard because I try not to change anything. Like I want it to be almost like a pure pen and ink, and I haven't been able to pull that off all the time. But like it starts with just the outlines, and then I'll do the first initial line work, and then I just start to build darker values on that. And you have to sort of build up your darks slowly, because if your eye goes through the composition, and if there's something that's too dark and your eye catches it, it can sort of screw up the flow of the visual flow. So you have to build up your values slowly to make sure that your intentions are being met.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
It sounds like you'd almost have to be in two totally different states of mind.
Totally different states of mind, yeah.
What state of mind makes you want to pick up the pen some days?
I'm just immensely curious about processes of creativity. I think if I could just be an artist without having to make a living at it, like if I I would be a very good retired person because if I didn't need money, I would be printmaking, I would be oil painting, maybe I'd even be sculpting. I would just be doing everything that I would love to do. I do also like the parameters of needing to survive and needing to make money off it. What that does for me is there's like a dialogue between the audience and myself, and I need to walk a line of making things that the public wants to see, that I understand that they will maybe buy out of this location to keep me paying my bills. But I also feel like, in a sense, I'm training my audience to be into something that maybe challenges their idea of art. So that's where the surreal part gets incorporated. You could look at it as a landscape, but sometimes it's just the paintings are made up of parts of abstractions. And in those abstractions, sometimes I'll spend a lot of time on little surrealistic elements that make people see things in my paintings, sometimes that I intend, sometimes they just see that I didn't intend. And I find that really interesting, that even if I'm painting what is just looks like a landscape, it can be read as something else, or objects seen in it. It's interesting. It's very fascinating to me how people will read into your art, even if you're not intending anything with what you're doing. They still do. I used to fight that as a younger artist, and now I really embrace it. And so, yeah, there's like this dialogue back and forth where I feel like I'm pushing people. I hope I'm pushing people to be more into art and maybe expand beyond just landscapes and stuff. But then there's also what I feel like I hear from them that I try to utilize. So yeah,
I love that. I love that concept as art as a conversation with your audience. Mm-hmm. When I view your paintings, sometimes I see the story of a hike I took, and there'll be a symbolic or artistic gesture that reminds me of that thing that I experienced on that walk. Or sometimes it's a wave, and the wave is a little more surreal than another wave, and it reminds me of that wave and that moment, and it kind of brings me back to that. But but it's an expression of you.
Yeah.
So that intersection between the way the audience receives it and the way you present it. And I like that idea that while you're not controlling it, you're kind of training the audience to say, hey, look at this. And I think that's really neat. Do you like the process or having the finished work? With all of what you just said, it sounds like you're a very process-oriented person.
Yes, very, very. Yeah, the finished work, once a painting's done or a picture's done, I'm quickly on to the next. I like to look at my art, but I wouldn't say it's dead to me after it's done, but the business model I have here is typically the original goes away pretty fast. Someone will buy it. And then all I see is a reproduction of it, which the colors are never quite the same. It's never as dynamic or as subtle as the colors.
If anyone listening has never seen an actual oil painting, put this podcast down, go to your local gallery or museum and go look at an original.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah. So I get so used to, I almost get, the way that the gallery works is the main thing I sell is paper prints and canvas prints. So I get so used to seeing the images as a print, and I see them over and over and over and over. So I don't get sick of my art, but I'm happy to create something new. So it all just keeps the ball rolling. And if I can make a living at it and just, I'm not getting rich at it by any means, but if I can just keep the ball rolling, that's what I really care to do.
I've spoken to other artists, and for them, some of them, art is almost a compulsion. They're going to do art, mm-hmm. and it doesn't matter. Nothing else really matters other than they just feel the need to do it. And others, it's almost like a struggle and a discipline to wake up every day mm-hmm. and do the art.
Yeah.
For you, which one of those sounds closer?
I'm in the middle. It's a compulsion, but it's, I think the age I'm at, I'm more, I think I was tougher on myself when I was younger. And so sort of the pain of trying to be creative was a struggle because I wasn't quite making what I thought I should make or think that the objects I should paint should look a certain way. And I feel like when I just sort of accepted who I am and how it comes out is how it comes out, whether, I think not worrying about whether, let's say I'm painting from a scene or something, if it doesn't come out the way the picture looked, but I still like what came out, then I'm, I think my ability's gotten better and I've given myself a lot more grace.
That's awesome.
I think it's a double win.
Was it sort of an imposter syndrome you were getting over where, I don't know.
I still feel like I have imposter syndrome.
Really?
Yeah. I still feel like, at times I'm hacky and it's through the process of working through problems that I realize I've been on this path so many times with each piece that you see. And I know that I know the path and I know that I can navigate it. And so I know that I can complete it.
But each time you step up to the plate, you've got to have that internal dialogue again.
Yeah, the voice of doubt isn't as strong as it used to be, but the voice of doubt is always still there. And I think one point I just committed to, when I was really feeling it a lot in my life, I just committed to, okay, I'm going to draw a certain amount every day, or I'm going to paint I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to do it every day. So regardless of whether that voice entered my head or not, I was going to do it anyways.
And that's where the discipline comes in.
Yeah.
Like you wanted to do it, you needed to do it, but you had to force yourself to do it.
Sometimes because you're just like, I don't know, it's easy to get distracted and do something, give yourself something else to do so you don't feel like so that you can avoid the struggle of finding your way through a piece of art.
I just read a book. I believe it's The War of Art, and they talk about resistance and how you have to overcome resistance in order to do your work. And that sounds very much like what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you find that you're better in the morning or in the evening?
I don't feel too creative before noon. But anytime after noon, it could be from noon to midnight.
Really?
Yeah, any time in that. I can paint in the morning. I just always feel like there's too many. There's my coffee. There's my shit. There's there's breakfast. There's just there's maybe exercise. There's a lot of things that need to happen in the morning that I feel would chop up that desire to get right in it. And I love my coffee, so it's like I'm gonna get up and make my coffee.
Coffee's so important, and I think it's a very Oregonian thing to be as into coffee as people are around here.
Yeah.
What are you drinking right now?
I roast my own, so I think right now I've got a Kenyan bean that I'm drinking, and it's good.
Do you roast like a lighter roast or?
I like a lighter roast. Yeah. I like the Ethiopians tend towards, or like the African beans tend. I think they're a harder bean, so they're better for the lighter roast. I think
You just
complex flavors.
You order them from like Sweet Maria or places
exactly.
like that. Yep. I've done this once before.
Oh, nice.
I think I have some green beans sitting in my pantry. I need to roast up. How do you have a roaster, or do you do on the stove? Or
I started with like it was almost like a glorified popcorn popper.
oh, okay.
For coffee roasting, and now I have it looks like a toaster oven. It's called a Baymore, and it's got a drum in it that rotates, and so I'm still like, I've been doing it probably like, I want to say I've been doing it 6 years, but I'm still very amateur. I think people that take a lot of notes and have a more scientific approach progress way faster than I do. I for most of the years up until this year, I just did it by eyesight, and this year I'm actually starting to take notes, and I'm trying to actually improve and have like consistency. If I find a bean I like, I want to be able to figure out how to replicate the flavor.
That's awesome. I know it's the same thing with so many things culinarily are like that. You want to be kind of just on a wing and let your imagination go and do it by eye. Mm-hmm. But like you said, the consistency is so tough to nail if you do it that way. Mm-hmm. But do you do a pour over, or are you a French press guy? I'm mostly a pour over. I like a French press too. I'm not a coffee snob in that you just, there's some that are just pour overs, and I like all the flavors. I actually even have I have a cone that's basically, it's a pour over cone. Mm-hmm. I have a regular cone, but then I have this pour over cone that has a plunger at the bottom, and so you can soak your grounds just like a French roast, right? French press. Uh-huh. And then you can just, after so many minutes, you put it on your mug and it'll drain right into your mug. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to check that.
So it's sort of like a hybrid. I don't know. I think the one thing about me though is I don't really have the sophisticated palate to pull out all the different flavor notes. I still don't know how people identify everything that they identify when they're drinking coffee. I'm just like tangy on my tongue, and like there's flavors I can sort of pull out, general flavors, but they get so particular about the flavors and I don't really think I have that sensitive of a tongue, I guess.
Not a coffee sommelier situation going on. It's either good or it's I like that. I'm the same way. I think most people, they know when they've had a good cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And that's all they wow, this is good. I don't really.
Yeah.
But that's so interesting that you start your day off with something that you've made. You kind of enjoy that. Mm-hmm. And then you get your day-to-day stuff out of the way, and then you're kind of free to explore your art.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you find that you get to spend a lot of time outside during the afternoons, considering that's when you're kind of painting? And does that inform your art anyway, that kind of your outside time is in the mornings?
I don't get enough. I actually don't feel like I get enough creative time. There can be whole days or weeks where I'm just working on making sure the shop's stocked with things. And
are you going to start selling your coffee here?
I have that as a long-term goal, cool. Sort of like in the background, but I'm not really. I don't really know if it's ever going to materialize because the equipment to do it commercially is very expensive. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I'm particular enough to, I don't know if that's me being hard on myself, or I don't know if I'm just not particular enough to feel like I could sell it, and satisfy a coffee lover. So,
interesting.
But what did you say? So outdoor. Yeah, I definitely being outdoors informs a lot. I take a lot of pictures and I paint in studio a lot. I want to get out outdoors and plein air paint more, which is plein air paintings when you paint on location. And I just bought a nice outdoor easel to do that, like a one that in a backpack. Because right now I just have like a 5-gallon bucket and a shitty old French easel. So I got this nicer backpack that I can go travel further in an easier manner. And my hopes are this next year I get out a lot more in nature and actually paint on location.
That kind of speaks to something you were saying earlier about like painting for commercial endeavor versus like as a retired person. The constraints sort of, I don't know, am I correct that the constraint of doing that kind of propels your art a little bit more? It gives you a different level of creativity.
Which one? That being a painting for people for a business,
right? Having those kind of being within, I want to say, the confines of doing that gives you an obstacle to overcome when you're doing the work.
Yeah.
And then plein air painting, it's sort of the same thing because you're at nature's mercy.
Yeah.
And so it kind of like forces you within some confines and challenges you in a different way.
Yeah. Because I'm primarily a studio painter, and I can take a long time on a painting in the studio. And there's been two things I've realized I've known for a long time that I would like to round out my abilities in other ways. And one of those ways is live painting. I'll live paint with, there's a couple bands that I've live painted with, over at Oxenfree. And then, plein air painting seems like another one of those where you're in both of those things. You're not thinking too much of, I mean, you're just trying to get the information on your canvas because everything's going to change before you know it. And so that's in the studio, I can just be so much more meticulous and I can get such fine details. With the plein air painting, I'm thinking more like just broad strokes, impressions of the scene. And I really appreciate a good plein air painter who there's just like minimal information there, but you know exactly what it is, and
That's neat.
if I could ever get to a point, I don't know that I'll ever be that type of plein air painter, but if I could get to a point where I could be at a place for an hour or so and walk away with a little piece of art that I like, I think that would be very very fulfilling. And also, I mean, since I'm a slow painter, there's sort of people that are watching me waiting for originals. And so I don't have a lot of originals available all the time. And I think the plein air painting would hopefully help solve that issue too, where I could have more originals available and for sale that people could buy. Because again, I'm still always trying to, I don't make a lot of money at this, and I'm always trying to make it so that it's more comfortable
To live.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So,
Have you ever thought about taking the plein air paintings and then kind of touching them up at the studio, taking them back and then filling in the blanks?
that's primarily what I do right now.
That's
That's what I have to do. But I think the goal would be to mostly complete them on location, I think. And that's just that'll happen through a knowledge of how to simplify, knowing your color palettes, and I'll learn all that stuff. Like right now, it's sort of a guessing game. I'll need to narrow down right now. I could have 50 colors. I've got just a mess of tubes of paint, and I just go, oh, that weird color looks good, and I'll just squirt it. And I think what I need to do out in nature is actually figure out these are the colors I need, sort of like give myself more parameters than I take in the studios.
Yeah, you almost have a luxury of a plethora of tools, and you got to really narrow it down.
Yeah.
I think it would be also really neat for you because then you actually get to have like kind of an excuse to go and explore places you want to paint.
Absolutely.
And I identify with that. That's why One of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is it gives me an excuse to go back to Brookings or talk to you. Or what do you love? Where do you like to go to get inspiration? Obviously, the coast. Are there specific places on the coast that are just every time you go there, you're struck? Or is it new places that get you?
I feel like this area, I feel like there's so much beauty in this area, and I feel like I could paint this area for the rest of my life and not capture all the beautiful little nooks and crannies that I see of it. So I'm pretty content for now painting this area.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because you can go big and small. I could paint a big grand seascape, or maybe I see a cool looking mushroom and maybe I'll just set up my easel and paint the mushroom, so right. I don't know. I think there's a lot more. I feel like I've just scraped the surface of painting the beauty of this area, and it's nice to have a place where I can make a painting and then I have the gallery to sell it. And because before I had the gallery, I traveled a lot for shows, and it's so hard. It was so hard. I mostly just kind of focused on waves, and I'd go to coastal places up and down the West Coast, and I've been on Hawaii and East Coast and Australia and different shows, but I've always kind of focused on waves in a generic manner that a wave I paint could go. It could look like the Pacific Northwest, or you could ship it over to Hawaii, and they'll think it's a Hawaiian wave, But every time I would go places, it's like everybody has their local favorite artist there, and so you're competing against all those factors, trying to get some business. It could be pretty discouraging at times. I've traveled a lot and bombed a lot of places for art shows.
I hate when that happens.
It's rough. It's rough, man. It's hard because you put so much work into this stuff, and then you spending money you don't have to go to this place, and then if it bombs, you're just like defeated.
So you kind of, if I build it, they will come. Put a gallery
It's
together.
sort of like that. I've felt that a lot, where I've kind of felt like this. That's exactly what this is. They're coming more and more, and it's such a cool thing to see the love of locals and tourists who make a point of coming in my gallery.
Do you think that your main staple is people from in and around Southern Oregon, or do you think that it's about 50-50 with people who are appreciating it and taking it with them?
It's a fair amount of locals. It's Southern Oregon. The primary areas I could pull out and say this is who I notice. Locals, people from the Rogue Valley, Redding, and then Utah. And I have no idea why Utah, but there's a lot of people that visit here from Utah.
Utah's a cool place. I've hung out in Salt Lake. It's neat. There's a lot of cool people. So
yeah, well, but I'm not sure why so many of them come to Brookings.
Interesting.
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
And I don't know that it's all they're not all religious either. So I don't know, I don't think they're coming just to support the local Mormon church,
Because there's no snow here.
That could be.
Get away from
that could be, yeah. But it's interesting.
That is cool. Having been in Southern Oregon for quite some time and growing up here, have you seen the demographic of your average Oregonian change over that time?
Yeah. When I was a kid, it was. I'd say that the archetypes were here. You had your loggers, fishermen, retirees, and hippie, and I feel like that's the archetypes for a lot of what is still here. It's just nuance to they all have these origins, but they've branched off into look like different types of people, but they're still kind of the same sorts of.
I've heard stories of back in the 70s or the 60s, and you'd go to a place like oh, you go north of here to say Gold Beach or Langley, and there was like a bar, and then hippies used the back door kind of thing. And there was like this real stratification between the people who lived here. Do you think that still goes on, or do you think it's more, there's more unity in it?
You know, it's funny. I didn't, even as a kid, I didn't really feel like there was separation. It just, everybody was kind of, I don't know. I never experienced that. I don't even as a kid, I don't really feel like I experienced that. I mean, I think people in small towns always like kind of look at people strange that don't look like them. but I still feel like, I don't know. When I was a kid, I grew up in the 80s, and it was just like neon had just come on the scene, and I sported it, man. And that was very different from the colors that were around, but at the same time, I think people are just like, they're kids, and they're just they're just kids. They're just kids doing kids things. So. Sure. I don't know. I didn't really experience. I think my dad talks about when he moved here and he started working at the mill. Like, he wasn't like them, so they were kind of like always harassing them or something. But I didn't experience it too much as a kid.
That's good. I mean, I guess one of the reasons why I ask is in the year 2024 in Oregon, we have a real dichotomy where it kind of converges in politics, and you kind of have right wing and left wing. And it seems like, especially in Southern Oregon, we've kind of either found a way to get along with everybody, and we kind of find a happy medium as we move through our lives, because the dichotomy is so exaggerated here compared to other places.
Right.
Do you feel like that's true?
I think so. I kind of feel like the political divide is more maybe to do with what the media says it is than what it is really. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like the people that are really trying to draw a line in the sand watch too much media.
That's probably very accurate.
Because I feel like I have people in my life from all political backgrounds, and I feel like we all love each other and try to get along. So
you don't have to agree to get along.
Yeah.
And I think you're poised brilliantly at the intersection of that with art.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody who doesn't look at one of your paintings. If they've been here, if they've gone hiking, if they've gone outside at all, and they see your paintings, they love it.
Yeah.
And it really is that neat place that art inhabits where everybody can enjoy it. It's music and paintings and those kind of things.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I know people can get divided about even music and stuff, but I think what I've seen in the shop is, and I've always felt like what I do is sort of like I'm building a bridge, just even like how I described earlier, building a bridge to maybe a deeper understanding of art for people. But I also feel like I am doing something spiritual, in that I have far right and far left come in this shop, and they both like the art, and everybody in between, and
they like each other when they're in the shop, probably.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. So, and I'm not a super political person. Mm-hmm. I really just want to see us figure out our differences and try to move on together. So I've always felt like what I do is sort of a bridge building thing. And I think I do that by not stating too much my political thoughts and things like that, because I do, I like comedy, and I like art, and I like music. And I think even like with comedy, there's some comedians that want to be political, and then there's just other comedians that realize that laughing is great medicine, and if you can, and it builds bridges between thought of like this or that, and I think I appreciate comedy more. I can appreciate someone making political jokes, but I just think it's always good for people to be able to laugh at themselves. And
it's another point that a funny joke is funny no matter who you are.
Yeah.
And it's great. And I think your art does the same thing, but instead of comedy, it's that sense of wonder. And we can all share that sense of wonder no matter where we come from.
Yeah.
And that's what it kind of evokes in people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I like wonder. I like the idea of, I like mythology. I like mystery.
Have you always, or was that something that's kind of, for me, it's something that's kind of come on more and more as I get older? Is that the same
Absolutely.
for you?
Yeah. I feel like I'm dove deeper into mythology and symbolism and metaphor and stuff is very important to my art.
What kind of literature or spirituality are you exploring right now?
I don't read enough. I listen to so many podcasts.
That's fair.
I need to read more. I had the past few years I had a Joseph Campbell. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed Joseph Campbell, and I really got into mythology, and I'm still like really interested in studying symbols and their importance in history and what they communicate. However, in my art, I don't want to just use old symbols. Mm-hmm. I want my symbols to be from me more than from something else. And as far as like spirituality, I'm an open book to learning. Mm-hmm. I'd spent a part of my life being Christian, and it felt limiting to me, and I'm just really interested in hearing people's thoughts on spirituality. And there's people I like, but I can't really say anymore that I would ever commit myself to like one path. Yeah.
Well, kind of all roads lead to the same kind of fundamental concepts.
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting how we all get there, though.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think so. And I sometimes feel like the idea of, you got to be in this group or else you're in trouble. I just feel like that's man-made. Yeah.
It's obvious that from just looking at your work that symbolism makes sense to me, that you resonate with that because your work is so symbolic. It's subtle, but it's very symbolic.
Yeah.
And I love that about it. I can stare at a piece of your work and always find something in there I hadn't seen before. Just, why is that line a little bit darker than all the others? What's important there? And however it comes out in my mind. But what about that symbolism triggers your brain? Or it's just kind of intuitive?
It started out as intuitive, and it's grown to be slightly more intentional, but it's still more based off intuition than it is any planned thing. I believe that I am, this isn't like something I made up. This is something I feel like many artists have talked about, but I feel like I'm an antenna. And I feel like I pick up frequencies and ideas that aren't necessarily mine, but I can use them. Mm-hmm. Not meaning like they're another artist, meaning they're out there in the ether, and I can pick them up and I can use them. So I'm very interested. My paintings usually speak to me even after I've created them. Meaning in my painting and in what I paint. Sometimes I don't even know what it's trying to say to me as I'm painting it. I may have a direction and I may head in that direction, or maybe I don't have a direction, but I've really tried to make myself open to receiving from outside of me. I do believe that there is something that does speak, that can speak to you. You can label that however you want, but I do believe that there is something beyond me that tells me, helps guides.
So your creativity is channeled.
I feel like it is. I feel like I feel like the ideas, it's like the ideas are out there, and if they went through another artist's mind, you would see the same theme. But what happens when that idea comes in that particular artist's head is it then gets filtered through all of your training and experiences and all that stuff, and then you output it. So it has your filter, but it is something that was from outside of me.
I think that makes a lot of sense with that. Like when you see a piece of art and everybody loves it, it's because it's something that's out there in that zeitgeist, if you want to call it that, or a song.
Absolutely.
It just, everybody likes it or everyone's touched by it because it's a channeling of what is out there and what we're all kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And if you're in the same kind of path as the artist, or if you share enough similarities with them or dissimilarities with them, it strikes you in a way.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. And I think for me, I've always been sort of comforted by, let's say I watch an artist documentary and I hear the same themes in them that I feel are in me. And I think some artists may be threatened by that, but I find it comforting because that feels like I'm on the right track when that's happening. I feel like when I'm doing something that is something that artists have done, sort of like with the minimal training that I've had, I feel like I'm tapping into something that is beyond me. It has to be beyond me because like it's just innate in me or something.
That's beautiful. That's great.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you ever feel like you're having a hard time tapping that source? And what do you do when you're not feeling those signals from the universe or whatever you want to call it? Do you give yourself a break or do you force yourself to go forward and find it?
I feel like I've been giving myself more breaks lately, but I think what happens is that energy just gets put into something else that's creative, and that's like
making coffee and
yeah.
Do you ever experience like the artist version of a writer's block?
Oh yeah. So you always have your ability. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how it works for musicians and other people, but you keep a sketchbook, or you keep something that you have ideas jotted down for those dry times. So if you want to be creative, you don't have to necessarily worry about the idea as much as just knowing you backlog ideas so that you don't have those dry times.
You can it so you can pop it out.
yeah, because creating is always so satisfying. Even when I'm sucking at it, it's satisfying.
It's the process that's moving you.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think that's the thing that I've learned with age is just to get into it because you'll enjoy it. Even if you're sucking at it, like there's days when I just like, I don't like what I'm creating, but it's such I'd rather be doing it sucking than not doing it.
When I read the Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna's talking about how he doesn't necessarily want to fight this war that he's about to go fight with his brother. And then Krishna basically says, well, you still have to do what you do. Just because you understand that it's meaningless doesn't mean that you don't get to live your life.
Yeah.
And it's sort of that fight that we have when we go to do a creative act, or even when you're going, like a construction worker is going to build that day.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, well, what does it all matter? What does it matter at all? But yet you finding why it matters and doing it.
Absolutely. I think I've definitely gotten to a point in different points in my life where you wonder why it all matters. And then I think now I just appreciate all of it. I think for me, there was always all this stuff that got in the way of creativity, like laundry, dishes, bills, whatever it is. There's just always these things that get in the way of my creative time. And it would always cause me like anguish and anger and stuff. And eventually, and I'm not perfect with it, but eventually I've just come to appreciate all the all the little things in life that you just have to do. You have to do it. And maybe there's other artists out there that don't have to do quite as much as you do, but that's not your path. And you know, to not be jealous of someone else's path, because the jealousy it only harms you, you know, like your path is your path. And whether you're doing more art or less art, I'm still an artist,
right?
You know? Like I'm still making a living as an artist, and I do enjoy all of it. Like I enjoy the shop. The shop is an art project to me. This is it's an art piece as much as any of my paintings are.
Just everything you do becomes this symbolic gesture that you're putting out and you're putting yourself into.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So you don't always have the time or energy to be creating art, but you know, I think if you can be at peace with what you have, you know, there's a lot of people that want to be me. They want to be making a living as an artist, but they don't see the backside of it. They don't see all the production stuff and everything, and just there's a lot to running a business. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
And I always try to spin it on them, and I'm like, you're painting, right? And they're like, yeah, but I don't make any money at it. Well, you get to do whatever you want. The parameters of not needing to make a living at it sometimes are more appealing than trying to make a living at it, you know?
Like you want to be an artist more than you want to be an artist. Like there's a huge difference between making art and being an artist, right?
Yeah, and I think, I don't think this path is for everybody, and it's very hard to be an artist. And, you know, you're like, I've never made, I've been practically at poverty level, and I'm always feel like poverty level is just right over there, like I'm far away from it at any point. And so there's a lot of stress in it. But then if you just go, wow, I'm doing it though.
And you have the support of the community for the most part, right?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, everybody's very supportive.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's very supportive. You know, it's just you always want to make a little bit more, but you know,
that's the game, right?
That's the game.
That's life. Is you always want to make a little more, do a little better.
It seems like it'd be a little bit more comfortable, but but yeah,
isn't that's the hard part? The Bhagavad Gita again is be attached to the work, not the result of the work. And sometimes we can get so caught up striving for something that we forget to take pleasure in the striving.
Totally.
You know?
Totally. Yeah, the striving is, you know, I thought about this recently. I've always struggled with the idea of heaven because I couldn't imagine a place where there's, you know, it's like that Talking Head song, that heaven's a place where nothing ever happens. And I'm just like, and he's sort of pointing out the absurdity of that thought, like that almost sounds like hell, you know, like
exactly,
like everybody's at the party at the right time, and you know, like, and then I was thinking about it recently. Heaven to me seems like if there's some, I know I don't have all the ins and outs of this figured out, but heaven to me would be being able to, because there's. In this life, I've focused on painting, but gosh, it'd be cool to be a hunter or a fisherman or a woodworker or a windsurfer or sailing boats, or, you know, like, but I don't have enough time in this life to do all those things and there's a reward in taking one thing and following it with the best of your abilities. Instead, I have been at times in my life where I was sort of a jack of all trades, not a good jack of all trades, but
none of them are.
Yeah, right. But there's something really rewarding about going super deep on one thing and then just putting your blinders on to all the other things in the world that you can't do because you know you're not going to do them well or have the time. But like heaven to me would be sort of getting to do any of the things that time is not a parameter. You're just you're just getting to do the thing, and you get to learn all the ins and outs of that thing. And then it also got me thinking about like reincarnation, because some people, like with reincarnation, it's you're trying to get off the cycle of
Dharmic cycle.
Yes,
right?
the dharmic cycle. But what if, like if we're here, well, let's say we're here willingly. What if that's actually what we're doing? We're actually playing a role in each life, and we can, and I know that there's big holes in this. I'm broad stroking this, but I just think it's interesting. Like, okay, this life I'm a painter, next life I'm this or that, and what if the dharma of my existence in each life is actually, I've realized that I like to go deep on a subject,
right?
And so each time I'm coming back, learning a different subject. It could be that's an interesting thought,
right? Like, I'll buy another ticket. I found out some stuff last time I want to try.
Well, it also makes it like, if you're on this ride, it makes it much more, if this is like an eternal ride that we're on, the idea that your attitude in the here and now, you shouldn't need to go to this place to feel like you're going to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Life in the moment is, with all its suck and its greatness, we're supposed to just really, I don't know what the word is for it, but we're supposed to be here for this, like, and be here now, like the Ram Dass thing, But
for sure. You can choose to look at yourself from a third person perspective and allow your mind to kind of become an objective observer of the things you're doing, or you can live in it.
Yeah.
Or you can be in it and be available to that moment that you're experiencing now.
Yeah.
And to be able to kind of go back and forth at different moments during the day is kind of handy.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to just really be focused and like you said, choose a life that's intentional, whether that's intentional to paint, or it's intentional to be a logger.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the mastery of that craft, whatever you're choosing to do, where I think most people find great satisfaction. And most people find a lot of peace in that thing.
Right.
I don't know if that's true, but it seems that way.
Yeah. I feel like if in any one of these things, you'll find that person that does maybe find peace in the thing that they're at peace with their whole life and what it is, and just finding peace in who you are, where you are.
I talked to you about how before I came into your shop, I went out to a local place and spent 5 minutes just trying to meditate with their head. Do you have any practices like that you do, or is it more just catch as catch can?
I've had different moments in my life where I meditated. I think I started meditating, maybe 7 years ago, and it's come and gone. My life got a little crazy in the past 4 or 5 years. Kind of let go of it. I'm trying to get back into it.
Mm-hmm.
I find it brings me centeredness and peace and more control over all the thoughts that go through my head, because I get a lot of thoughts, and it sort of slows them down, and it slows me down a little bit too, where I'm more patient in the world. I'm not as reactionary to the things that occur to me on a day-to-day basis. That feels good when you're in control of yourself. Like sometimes it's just like you want to flip off a driver or something, and it's just like, no.
And sometimes you do.
Sometimes you do, and it's okay.
Sometimes you do.
Yeah,
that's okay.
It's okay, but it also feels good when you let that moment go by and and you were patient,
mm-hmm.
and you didn't react.
You get a lot less regrets that way.
You do, and I think I spent a lot of my life on the other side of that,
mm-hmm.
and now I'm not 100%. I don't think I'll ever be 100%, but I'm more on the side of being patient and letting the moment pass, and then evaluating not letting the craziness that I see get to me and me get pulled into it.
Just being, like you said, more control,
more center. Yeah,
that's great. Do you think that when you're feeling that way, does your work improve?
Yeah, I think I've become more patient with myself, and the idea that I can figure out a problem and figure out how to maneuver around it to find a solution. So yeah, I mean it goes over into all areas. I have a son. I'm more patient with him. Like it's just it. I think the patience.
How old is he?
He's 12.
12 is a cool age.
Yeah, yeah. He's a fun kid, but
Patience for sure, though, right?
yeah. Well, I really enjoy him. He's very creative, and we have a really good time together. I don't know. I really enjoy seeing his creativity develop, and I don't know where it's going to go entirely, but I think I'm giving him the muscle memory of being a creative type.
Like your father did for you.
Yeah. My dad definitely planted that seed in me. I think I've probably given my son more tools than my dad was able to give me, because I don't know that my dad knew the tools he had well enough, but I've made a living at it. So I think I'm able to sort of help him understand the game a little bit more,
Sure.
and just, but I think the thing that I'm trying to do is just give him the ability to think creatively. Because I think no matter what he does, I think that'll be an asset.
Absolutely.
Because he'll be able to throw in ideas when other people are maybe clammed up and don't know what to do.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to look at it. Creative people, they just have a way of moving through the world, seeing the path between the obstacles instead of fixating on the obstacles.
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And I hope he doesn't seem like he has the hangups that I had. I was kind of a person who didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, and I think even into my late 30s, I was still discovering that I can learn new things because I didn't think I was capable.
I remember in my 20s wanting to learn how, it was when I wanted to learn how to surf. And I thought, oh, I'm too old to learn how to surf. I'm 20-something years old. These people have been surfing their whole lives.
Yeah.
And now in retrospect, it was so silly for me to have that block.
Yeah.
It would be silly for me to have that block now if I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
But I think time has a way of evolving as you get a little bit older and mature a little bit more. And you're not old by any means, but just having gone through a number of decades beyond two, it really gives you a perspective of your life and your capabilities.
Yeah.
Do you see your son having those same, you were saying that you had some self-doubt troubles. He doesn't seem to have them.
I think he does, but he also is more assertive than I was. I think he does for sure have his doubts. That's where I try to give him the tools because
What do you do with them? What do you tell him?
Well, when there's a problem that arises, I have a mantra with him. It's just like practice, and I don't say practice makes perfect. I say practice makes better. I feel like that's more realistic. I don't know what perfection is. I'm not gearing towards perfection, but practice will make you better. And is you can still have what you want in the distance, but practice is those steps. Practice makes better is the steps that you take to get to that horizon place that you want to get to. That practice makes perfect seems to me that seems a little bit more lofty and hard to achieve. I mean, I understand it, but that seems reserved for like the Michael Jordans and people like that are sort of freakishly exceptional.
Sure.
I think practice makes better. You will get better. You want to be a better musician, you practice. You want to be a better
father.
Yeah, everything. You just practice. You just you will get better.
Just do it more.
Yeah. It's very simple mantra with it, but it works. And then there's definitely always like practical moments I can help him maybe see how to do something like structurally how to maybe fix something. that he's doing, but for the most part, he doesn't want to hear my advice.
You just have to give it anyways. He'll tap into it later, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting, though. I love what you're saying about practice. Perfection is something you should aim at, but that's all you're doing.
Yeah.
You're just aiming at it. And then generally perfect seems to be a moving goalpost anyway.
Totally.
Because by the time you get halfway there, you're not even interested in getting to the place you thought you were setting for.
Totally.
So,
yeah. The path. Yeah, that's like that fog thing I was telling about. Like
interesting.
even with this, you're sort of on a fog. Like I feel like you're on a foggy path, and then the closer you get to it, the more clear it is. You know?
I feel that way about the discussion we're having. There's sort of we don't know each other. We just start talking. And then over the course of the conversation, there's some themes that have kind of developed, and we kind of know what this conversation is about, but only in retrospect.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
And that's so cool.